bias. What? The Warcraft reboot thing? That sounds cool. Maybe we'll watch that. But this seems more like lore tied. I don't think the. Do you guys think that as typical Horde players? Because I've been an Alliance player almost my whole life. I don't think they're Alliance biased. Maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe I'm blind because I've always loved the Alliance. Let's see.
This has been a point of discussion since the start of World of Warcraft. Blizzard is biased for one faction at the expense of the other. Now,
I mean, we're the real villains. If the story, we kill whoever, whatever, just to get gold's sake. That's true. Just to get gold for the sake of stuff. Yeah, I mean, we do kill everything. I don't even know how the dragons are allowing us in the Dragon Isle. Literally every time a dragon has shown up in game, we kill it. Definitely Alliance bias. Get the heck
with
out
the
of here.
fact that the Alliance sacked Orgrimmar twice, essentially, the fact that they won the battle for Azeroth and pretty much all the battles in the war, the fact that they're essentially always the good guys, could there actually be some truth to this statement? On the other hand, they lost a lot of battles. They lost Terramore and Teldrassil, and let's be real, a lot more people are actually...
Miggity makes a good point. It's hard to have a morally gray world when we solve every problem with murder.
The Horde as opposed to the Alliance in the actual game. However, is there any truth to this statement, as Blizzard actually at some points even admitted that certain expansions have been Alliance biased slightly? So what are the arguments for and against this statement being true? Did you know if you use pirated software like Windows,
your advertisement.
you're very vulnerable to viruses and malicious activity? Well, the sponsor of this video, Royal City Keys, is offering licensed software for the cheapest prices on the market. In fact, I got Windows 11 for about €3 in total. Now, if you use my code DORAN, you will get an additional 10% off. So if
Talking
you
is a lot harder than
and
killing
get something for
someone
yourself, check
and
out
looting
my
their
link in the
corpse.
description or the QR code
We
on
have a
the screen.
disagreement. True.
So let's be real, people have been complaining since forever, and a lot of that has never actually been based on anything. Whenever something is done, someone is going to say they're biased one way or the other. However, there are actually some points that make sense when you examine it, and some areas where people may actually be right. They may actually have a point. Right off the bat, let's be real, gameplay-wise, Blizzard is definitely not Alliance biased. In fact, I've already made a video, but on some servers there is like 85 to 15% Horde Alliance ratios, and on average, a lot more people are playing Horde as opposed to the Alliance. Not even that, all the competitive metrics...
a lot more people are playing Horde, that's for sure. And that's why they opened up cross-faction, basically, because Horde just became the raiding faction. Like, if you wanted to raid, you had to go Horde.
Towards the Horde,
That's
and
the reason
at
I
the
currently
moment,
play
the Horde
Horde.
really is the winning faction. However, there are some points that are definitely true where the Alliance really is heavily favored in regards to the actual story and the lore side of the game. At this point in the franchise, there are no good guys, the good and the evil faction. However, Warcraft as a series really started completely different with this black and white, really black and white contrast, as the Horde initially was literally the epitome of evil, just bad guy orcs invading the peaceful human kingdoms of Azeroth for the sake of conquest. They brought destruction, ogres, dragons, trolls down upon the human paladins that only wanted to defend their homeland. However, over the years that really changed, and a lot of races joined the factions really evolved. In fact, orcs and the humans are really not that big of a deal, as now we have so many different peoples that are a part of the Horde and the Alliance. Then it was further and further expanded that the orcs were just manipulated by the Legion, so ultimately they were a victim themselves. What is interesting though, despite this massive evolution and the fact that Warcraft lore made like a 180-degree turn since Warcraft 1, I think Blizzard still sort of kept that original concept. Sure, it isn't nearly as black and white as it once was. It is a bit diluted, a lot diluted, but it's still kind of there in the back. I mean, let's just examine the previous expansions. We've had the madman Garrosh that wanted to absorb all god power, that only cared about Orcish supremacy and wanted to rule the world for the sake of his own power and an ego trip. Then we've had another warchief,
I kind of miss Garrosh. Garrosh was a cool villain. And did you guys know, fun fact, Garrosh was the first villain ever born and killed within the World of Warcraft? Yeah, Garrosh's first appearance in WoW lore was in Nagrand, in Burning Crusade. Garrosh was the first character that did not exist in Warcraft 3 or any of the RTSs. So Garrosh was born and killed within World of Warcraft. Fun fact.
Sylvanas that was serving some obscure death god in the Shadowlands that literally just used the faction in order to create conflict, and she did a lot of terrible things. The only
Dropping the
point
knowledge on us,
there
that's right.
is
That's right, that's what I
Vol'jin,
do.
the very short time he ruled, and he pretty much did exactly nothing and ultimately got tricked by Muezala in order to allow Sylvanas to serve her own goals. So really, he was just a tool, a very short-lived tool. Now, when you examine
He got done wrong, man. He got done wrong. What a cool character to just be fooled into putting Sylvanas at the helm.
Now, when you examine what happened on the
Garrosh
other
did
side,
nothing wrong,
Alliance
Edgrove
has
says.
pretty much just been the Valiant Defenders, and they had consistent leadership that was generally
supporting
noble
me all
and
over the place?
generally
How's it
ethical
even
for
possible?
the most part. Sure, there was a tad bit of instability back in Classic when Varian was missing, but they were ruled by Bolvar, who was beyond an ethical and noble paladin. Then Varian was sort of hot-headed. He had this side, this emotional side, made some rash decisions, but he was almost always noble and never really did any really bad things. Then the leader of the Alliance
Good guy.
gave his life against the Legion invasion, proving that
Varian was my favorite, man. I was actually sad when he died. I liked Varian a lot. I thought he was a cool leader.
he was even more noble, and then he was succeeded by his ever noble, perfect light priest son that was too
Brad Pitt.
good for his own good, and he was all about peace at any cost. So throughout the entire storyline, the Alliance had the good and the noble leaders, while the Horde was going from one crazy, power-hungry war chief to another, despite the fact that this was not an orcish demonic horde anymore, but it had races like the peaceful Tauren. Now, that is...
Well, look, the Tauren, I feel like, have always been portrayed as a good race with noble values. I mean, the Tauren, they stood up to Garrosh and his ways, right? That was why Cain, Bloodhoof, he had the whole fight with Garrosh. I mean, that whole thing went down. Garrosh cheated unknowingly to Garrosh. Garrosh didn't know he was cheating. His weapon was poisoned, and he cut Cain, and that was the reason he lost. But Tauren are definitely good guys. I mean, and we even saw in BFA, right? Bane Bloodhoof, he just didn't go along with shit, and Sylvanas imprisoned him, and he needed to be freed. The Tauren have always been noble as far as Horde go.
From the side of the leadership. The other side are the actual battles and the zones. Realistically, there are a lot of
And
contested
Anduin is actually very close friends, too, with Bane Bloodhoof.
areas in the actual game, but territory-wise, there is a slight bias towards the Alliance having more zones. Blizzard tried to balance this out a bit in BFA, but then ultimately they kind of reverted most of it. However, the main point are the actual battles and the wars that occurred and just the way they are framed. I previously made videos listing both the Alliance and the Horde crimes, and let's be real, the Horde is way worse in terms of atrocities and crimes committed. Sure, the Alliance hasn't been innocent either, but most of the
dead
time
Tauren
they
in the
either cared a bit for the casualties and had some humanitarian efforts, or it was done by someone loosely related to the Alliance, if not related at all, like Gyarados, or the Interminate Camps that was ultimately not even the same Alliance, while Horde...
The Tauren are the reason the Forsaken are part of the Horde, correct.
At the same time,
Correct,
was like,
Rez,
let's
please.
do crime and we're going to support it directly. We're not even gonna cover our tracks. Then, when it comes to battles, most of the time the Alliance was on the defense while the Horde is on the offense. Sure, there were some scenarios with both factions were attacking, such as Mists of Pandaria. Here, both factions reach for the newly discovered continent, but when you think about it, the Alliance was more like, let's follow the Horde and let's not stay behind, while the Horde was like, let's get to the heart of the ancient forgotten old god so we can eat it and so we can conquer the world. Then, the Horde descended into a civil war, and the Alliance, as the good guy, decided to help one of the warring factions. They essentially sacked Orgrimmar, got to the throne room, but instead of conquering it and imposing their own will and
Man,
doing something
that version
sort
of
evil,
Anduin
instead of conquering
looked so janky. This version of Anduin was one janky looking model.
it and imposing their own will and doing something sort of evil, they decided to be the good guy and to give them a warning slap, once again being the noble faction taking the high road. Then, with Battle for Azeroth, the Horde clearly started this war. The Alliance was the obvious victim. Then they had their own little terrible offensive on Lordran, but once again, the Horde is the bad guy as they did more damage to their own city than the Alliance invasion itself. Then, when we look at the entire
Great value,
war
Anduin.
overall, the Alliance not only won the war, but they pretty much won all the important battles. They restored the Night Elven lands, they defended their own, and ultimately
Looks really
Undercity was
princey.
just clans, but
Yeah.
was terribly damaged.
He looked like he was made of plastic. It was very
the
weird.
point I'm making, despite whatever faction you're playing, I think you can kind of agree with me here that there is definitely a bit of bias with the Horde being the constant aggressor and the bad guy, while the Alliance is mostly on the defensive and is nobler in general. There are barely any Alliance bad guys overall, but you have Garrosh, Sylvanas, you have the Horde inciting Radgate, and a bunch of other events. Now, at one point, Blizzard actually sort of admitted there is a bit of Alliance bias in Cataclysm, and I don't think that is that bad of a thing. It is kind of natural. It isn't easy to just balance out the factions perfectly so it can be like 50-50. However, let us now take the other perspective and see where the Alliance isn't actually all that biased, and there are some decent points for this. I'd say especially lately, similar to how the light is grayer than it used to be, the Alliance has also been made a bit more gray. First, there is like 3 half-row commanders that they have, Gen, Tyrande, and Jaina, and they're acting a lot on their emotions and starting conflicts as vengeance, not really taking the high road as is usual for the Alliance. Someone here could make the counterpoint that this is actually the perfect example of Alliance bias, as all these 3 are actually acting out on the fact that the Horde hurt them first, but let's just focus on the point at hand. Gen literally started a faction conflict based
No, Gen was a kind of like you questioned his actions as far as the Alliance went.
on no evidence.
Are we
back
formed
Legion,
up yet?
when he
Yeah,
lost Sylvanas,
basically.
abandoned them to the Legion invasion.
I'm gonna start heading
Jaina
out there. Everyone should
literally
start
wanted
heading
to
out.
drown the entire city of Orgrimmar full of civilians, and
Yeah, Jaina
she
lost her
also
shit for a
just
while.
started destroying and demolishing the Blood Elves in Dalaran, and Tyrande went a bit crazy with the Night Warrior, but she didn't really do all that much. At the same time, there is the argument that the current leader, Tyrellian, is not all that great and is more dedicated to the Army of the Light in the Alliance, and he actually participated in some torture. Then, you could make the argument while they
there's that.
won the Battle for Azeroth, the War of Thorns, they didn't really win anything. Teldrassil still lost, they lost a lot of their numbers, and they never really retook Lordaeron. At the same time, previously, Terramore was mana bombed and it was never really restored. It is a ruin to this day. So, with all these arguments, you can't really say that they have always been favored. I mean, some of the races, like the Night Elves, have really received and continue to receive the short end of the stick. However, the argument isn't that much.
That's because Jaina's a bit of a dick.
In them winning wars,
I don't know if that fits with the lore.
but it is the fact that there is a bit of a bias in the Alliance overall being the good guys. Objectively, the Alliance never really had death camps and experimented on live beings like the Horde did, nor did they create this terrible plague, nor did they burn down an entire city full of civilians. They did some bad things, but most of the time it is justified. So ultimately, my opinion on this is I think the faction bias is definitely highly exaggerated by a lot of the community, but there is slight truth to this. There is definitely a bit of bias. The Alliance really has been the good guys and the defenders for the most part, and almost always taking the high road, which I think ultimately derives from the actual root of the entire Warcraft franchise. Thank you for watching. Check out how will Orc Paladins be explained by clicking on the screen, and check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real-world history. See you next time.
See you next time. Yep, we're full. Let's go, guys. Head on over to the raid. Nice video, as usual. Are they Alliance bias? As an Alliance player, I say no. Fuck you guys. They're not. Just kidding. They probably are. They probably are. I mean, like what they said, when the game was originally created, it was created with an Alliance bias, right? The Alliance were the clear good guys, and the Horde were the bad guys. And I think they've kind of taken that. They've gone back from that recently. I'll be on in like 40 minutes. Sounds good. Like, I get it. You had a rough childhood. You struggled as a young adult to find your place. That's no reason to be a jerk almost all the time, right? Right. I agree. Alright, we're heading out to raid. I'm gonna try to, you know, add some people. Ooh, a lot of... Oh, I got summoned. Well, I'm here. So thank you. No need. I'll be on in like 9 to 10 hours. There's Are you guys summoning inside? Might be a tad bit late for raid. Yeah, might be. Oh, no, you summoned me outside. How did we end up with 5 healers? We're gonna need more DPS.